couple seconds. Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order. It's the budget meeting on May the 21st. We're going to move things around a little bit. We're going to have Fire go first and talk to us about their budget and capital campaign, capital plan for this coming budget year. So when we have 25 minutes, 20 to 25 minutes, if you are good with that, Chief?
Sure.
And Laurel? You can sit in these two.
I'll give it. Who is this?
No,
Oh, it's
No, she's not
Dutton.
here, that's Dutton.
She moved for the day from over here to over there, but that's,
Oh, why don't you,
I was just gonna just
Okay.
move
Yeah.
her. Yeah, she can, it's okay.
yeah, were you move her back down?
Gotcha.
I'm good.
Thank you.
It's fine.
We're live, so I can't say what I would say.
Wow. I'm gonna infer with
No,
it
I
and
was
say
gonna
that
say-
wasn't appropriate.
Well, you just said it.
Oh, okay.
Yes, okay, so it's not as offensive. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Michael Baker, Fire Chief. Thanks for having us today. Just really having a conversation in general about, of course, next FY '26 budget, and then really wanted to talk specifically about overtime, because that's always a question that I'm always sitting in this chair to answer or to request something for. We stayed flat to our budget plan for FY '26 after discussion and working with city and understanding the budget situation and doing everything we can to help ensure that our priorities and the city's priorities match. We have 0 new positions in this upcoming budget. We really have no major changes to non-capital items. Fortunately, our short-term capital is still healthy in this budget. We're able to catch up on replacing some fleet vehicles and things like that that we needed as well. We are a couple of focused items. If you'll notice 7D, we're working on an additional UTV to support the water park rescue operations and things along Zinc Lake and the Swift Water course. And then some fitness equipment and things like that that we do just as a standard, usually a replacement cycle for fire station fitness. We do have some drone in the short-term capital as well, some drones to continue to expand our Drones First Responder program, as we are a fairly unique organization within the nation, as one of the only departments that has the opportunity to have the licensure to provide that service. And so as we expand that opportunity to offset some of our rescue operations and response operations as we go forward. And then additional capital, we have some foam that we noted we're replacing some very expensive, is Class A foam for situations such as we had at the chemical fire late last year out on off of Charles Page. And then you'll note a lot of our things, with the exception of like an EMS golf cart for special events, are all generally fire station support. So refrigerators, ice machines, utility compressors, things like that are all support for our operations there. So generally, with the exception of the firefighter vacancies, we have 1 academy scheduled as quickly as possible. So we're hiring in this process right now. We're currently in the physical fitness assessment phase. We're going to begin our interviews in July, and our start date is for October, so that we can get that class out as quickly as possible before we get the spring rush of spring break and vacation, things like that, that will help us address overtime specific issues. So that's just a really high level on our general budget overlay for the upcoming fiscal year. And again, working very diligently with the city and we clearly understand the current budget situation. We have aligned to try to do the best we can to be within that parameter. So, is there any questions on that or anything you want to add, Commissioner?
No, I just want to add that, we understand from a public safety perspective, both police and fire, that there are lots of wants and needs that the departments have. And we spend a lot of time, and we're very conscious about being fiscally responsible, as well as trying to meet the priorities of the city. And we know that every aspect and every priority has a touch on public safety. And so it was really important to maintain focus on those priorities, which is why we don't have any cuts and maybe some slight increases in a couple of these budgets. But really tried to stay aligned with the principles that the rest of the city is putting out. So, and we can get into those more specifically throughout the conversation.
Seeing nothing, I'll move on to understanding Tulsa Fire Department overtime, as that is one of the most significant budget costs that we have as a department. And you'll see as we go through here, one of the general overarching improvements that we've made since my time being fire chief and since 2020, and with finance staff in the office, I hope they are in the room as well. We have gotten very granular in our reporting on overtime and understand better now where that money specifically goes. And we can identify such items, and we'll see, that are reimbursable. So items such as code enforcement work that's reimbursable by a client, or special events that are paid by a vendor. So one of the things that I will be clear about up front is that the key to hiring, retention, and recruiting firefighters is being able to provide compensation that's market comparable, and however, that does impact our overtime. This is a breakdown of percent increase based on the labor contracts and the improvements in salaries that were provided over from fiscal year 21 into current 25. And if you'll notice, most was the column on the left is rank, FDO1, which is a firefighter, moving through lieutenant, captain, staff officer, district chief, assistant chief, and then finally deputy chief. And what this does is it shows the contractual agreements that have been negotiated in the process. And you'll see that we have 23.2% is the high that has been included across all of these negotiation periods. And so that comes into play when we're looking at how much our budget has increased or changed over time, to ensure that everyone understands that we have increased the amount of cost on salary. And so those things and those elements of compensation play heavily in the amount of overtime that we've been spending in budget.
And I would like to add that this budget that's proposed does not account for an increase. We are currently in negotiations with FOP and the fire union. We're shifting here a little bit to go to that. And the budget plan does not account for or allow, we did not appropriate any funds for new monies or pay increases to either fire or police. And so the continued increase has gotten particularly the fire department to a very comparable salary to their market surveys. And so we felt like fiscally and financially that it was not foreseeable or a good idea to include new money to the pay chart for the fire department.
So secondly, the contract allows a provision for the amount of what actually it comprises a person's hourly rate, especially for computation of overtime. And so part of that is all items in their compensation package is the way the contract is worded. So we have members that are on technical rescue team that get a 5% stipend, and a lot of those stipends do not cross over, so you don't have a hazmat paramedic or a rescue paramedic particularly. But you have these different stipends, you have education pay, and I'm gonna skip over longevity for a second, but second language, and then we just introduced canine handler because we have folks with the USAR team that were taking care of a canine, for vet bills and food and things like that. So, but if you'll note that longevity, based on years of service, what we have seen over the negotiation period that I just showed you is a 218% increase in longevity pay. Okay, so when you look at that in comparison to the 23% salary increase, you look at the 218% increase in longevity pay over time, and not everybody gets the top amounts. Clearly at 20 years you start getting the higher levels, but where that comes in is this is all, any pay that a member gets is also calculated in how their overtime rate is paid. That makes sense, right? Everybody clear on that? So here's basically some of the leave categories that we have, and we'll kind of bring this all together as we continue. So, basically, our leave types include vacation, comp time. We have an hours reduction shift, also known as a city shift. Of course, sick leave, injury leave, parental leave, military leave, funeral leave, and FMLA. So all of those, if you look at the averages that I've provided there, so on any average shift, this is per day of work, you'll have a total number of 229 assigned per shift. 226, yes, thank you. I was 3 off. 226 assigned per shift. You're gonna lose 86 average off the top because of the number of folks on leaves. So the max we can have off is 35, which is negotiated in the contract, comp times 7. And hours reduction shift is, that is an FLSA balancing, they work a 56-hour week and then a 52-hour week, and they're compensated for that gap through what we call a city shift. And so that's at 18 of average. So we're at 8. Injury leave and military leave and funeral leave all, kind of go hand in hand. But we're going to talk specifically about parental leave and the benefit that was negotiated in a while back. So my point is that in this given scenario, we would have to call back 27 firefighters to meet the minimum staffing level of 150 per shift that we have to have. And that's a contractual provision as well to staff all apparatus. So we need 150 people on duty. So if you look at that, we estimate that our hourly or our daily callback shift for 24 hours is going to cost about $1,500. So at 27 people, that's $40,000 in a 24-hour period. Okay, that's a significant amount of cost, and there are components of that, like you see there, that are, we don't have the opportunity to have more people off on vacation or comp time. Now, sick is clearly something that we can adjust, and we can work hard to ensure that folks are using sick leave appropriately. Injury leave, our health and safety officer is doing an incredible job of studying injury patterns, making sure that we are providing the safest work environment. We have apparatus design that ensures that we've made some changes on that to ensure that we are not having climbing issues or lifting issues related to fire trucks. And then last but not least, we have worked hard through the CARES program to reduce our lift assist injuries. And we have some good numbers lately on the ability to reduce that. And so we're trying to keep injury leave down as much as possible. And it is a dangerous job. People do get hurt, burned, trips, slips and falls, et cetera. But that's, these are average numbers. So let's talk about parental leave negotiated in 2023. Here's the thing. We've hired over 160 new firefighters since 2021. So we've replaced, we've had a lot of retirements, we've hired a lot of new people. So these folks are coming in most of them coming in the 20 to 25-year-old range. So what they're doing is they're establishing their family and their career. So a lot of them are having children. Since 2019, we've hired 216, so that's 32% of our field suppression staff have left 5 years on the job. So we have noted an increased utilization of this parental leave benefit, which is the 6 weeks of time away, over the last few years. And so we looked at July 1st of 2024 really to get us a good time frame up until yesterday. Average 3 members off per shift on parental leave. Average cost of $1,500, $4,500 per shift to cover those folks. And so the bottom line is, of the 209 days, 193 days of 3 or more people were called back. So for that, so far, that benefit this year has cost us $868,500. Okay? So again, that was a benefit that was provided in negotiations, and it's clearly folks are using it. They're starting their new families. We just want to make sure that it's well understood that this is an area that we have no control over managing that amount of folks that are basically having their children and being on parental leave. So if we looked at the fire staffing model, there we are, 226. We averaged about attrition to about 2.5 or so a month, but if you looked at this model is 7. Anybody that we have detailed to headquarters on light duty, whether we have a disciplinary case pending, that are on administrative duty, military deployment, et cetera, or if we have some special assignment, working on a project or something like if we need to up staff training during a large class. Anytime training, professional development happens, or there is contractual business for union. So we could have about 10 people average for some kind of headquarters duty. So that gives us 209 at minimum staffing, and then with our total leave, that would be a situation there with a 0 callback. But that gives us about 10 folks, and so generally we try to keep processing these training requests for outside training. Folks that are going out of town, that could potentially impact callback when we approve training. We try to keep them either returning to duty that evening or letting them use some leave type that they have to go. Maybe we compensate for the class, but yet they're using their leave to go. We work diligently to ensure that our training is respectful of overtime as well, and that we don't have a lot of folks missing work shifts for training. So if you look at overtime hours by the rank, you can see again FDO1, which is the firefighter rank, and FDO3, which is the captain rank, are the ones who are working the most amount of overtime hours on the department. So what's important to understand is that the FDO2, 3, and 5 will be your higher, they're going to be at the higher end of the hourly rate. And those are folks with generally more seniority, more longevity on the department. So you can see the impact of time, and those folks are coming and working some of those overtime hours. So this is what I was discussing. We went from basically one main kind of overtime category to we have broken out into all of these, basically these 26 different levels of overtime coding. And so some of that is reimbursable and some of that is not. And so you can see, like, we have special events or overtime related to a FEMA deployment or some kind of municipal event like Freedom Fest or something like that we were doing. A lot of those are reimbursable or not. Then we move back into things such as emergency callback, if we have a large incident or disaster locally. Any kind of reimbursable through FEMA or state reimbursement. Hazmat fee does also, we've had lovely conversations with the council about hazmat fee, and so that does help us collect some of the call, if we have to call back in on hazmat for any particular reason. Sometimes USAR training will generate some lost time during the day, and we might have to fill, or they could be on training as well, that would generate callback. So my point is that we've really gotten granular over these categories, and we understand exactly which ones we can impact the most, and we can adjust to keep our budget in check and ensure that we're being a good steward of our payroll. And so if you look at the category, the most category that is of the top 3 is that 250 category. I'll go back, which is overtime callback, which is filling those vacancies. So whether that's vacancies for lost time due to a contractual obligation or a benefit, or if we have somebody sick or whatever, that's that largest impact of our overtime is that one category. So the others generally 215 and 217 run into special event overtime or FEMA deployment. So if you look at and I know it's kind of hard to see, and I apologize for that, it's a big chart, but I wanted to show some of the percentage of change in how we have managed overtime over the last few years. And so if you look at the hours, all the way back to FY21, you got 102,000 hours of overtime. But if you go into 22, well, that period of time we're looking we had a lot of deployments that year. reimbursement. That was a big hurricane season, a lot of FEMA deployments, and so it went up significantly. And again, there was a lot of hours there. The problem we have with FEMA deployments is we do get reimbursed for that. It goes back to the general fund and usually at a rate that's higher than what we actually expend. The problem is that the city ends up front loading that cost to the federal government for our services. And so we do have a new fund over the last few years at the state level, and as soon as we get reimbursement from TEMA, we're able to get that back a lot quicker, and then the state emergency management will go to the out-of-state requester to get reimbursement. So it gets our money faster, but it does create an impact. But what I'll show you next is that FY23, if you look at the percent of change between the 2 years, FY23 and 24, we were at 0.085%, really less than 1% difference in our hours. And we managed that a lot better. We had more data and more information, and we were able to keep those 2 hours consistent with our budgeted goals for keeping our overtime rate very stable there. And so, but if you, down at the very bottom, the average hourly rate, you can see that's what has increased 7%, 3%, 8%, et cetera. So my point is that the cost of overtime is going up, although that we haven't worked more hours at overtime. So we've been trying to keep our overtime, the things that we can do as administration, by keeping folks at work the best we can, providing safety and reducing injuries. We've gotten that stabilized over the last few years, but the cost generation is increasing because of that changes in their pay scale. Okay, so wanted to talk about some of the things that I've worked on to, and our staff has come together on to address overtime issues and have some reduction steps for the remainder of this fiscal year and for the upcoming fiscal year in FY26. So we've been, between the staff, I've been in the 2 support services, the fire marshal office. I initiated a 25% division staff overtime reduction. So a lot of staff is either, Chief Francis had a conversation with his staff, and they are flexing time based if they have an after hours, if they have to go in for a after hours inspection or a non-reversible emergency callback. So they're helping us to adjust that time as well. Clearly, we've improved data collection to ensure that we're targeting those areas that are increasing or they're having issues with overtime. Communicated with all command officers, specifically had an in-person meeting this morning with all district chiefs, and talked to them about the management of the leave, sick leave, and anything else that they can do at their level to control the loss of or vacancies in their time. Address known violations of sick leave policy, so we have taken disciplinary action on known cases, so we of folks that have not used sick leave appropriately. So we have handled that within our policy. We've improved injury and risk reduction messaging and oversight to prevent lost time is the biggest one, is just trying to make sure everyone is at work. And last but not least, did have suspended all USAR out-of-state deployments to minimize the impact on lengthy collections related to FEMA reimbursements.
And furthermore, I know Chief Baker and his staff have worked diligently. I've been working with them. I'm learning just as much about overtime and their expenditures as everybody else at this table right now. And I know that we've got some good management strategies to try to control that if the leadership push it down. We also talked about the academy class of moving it up to October, and I'm confident that they can aggressively hire the positions for that. Upon filling those positions, they will be fully staffed based on their 734 recommendation, and fully staffed at the point where we see the uptick of overtime and the callbacks start to kick in, which is right around spring break. So that was purposefully done so that we could be fully staffed at that point. And then, like I said, just some negotiated items also that we have to work on with the union, but we recognize could have some potential impact to the overtime budget. And so we left it flat, hoping that we can stay within those confines by having some discipline and working with the union collaboratively so that we can meet our needs.
Good. Thank you all very much. I'll just state that I really do appreciate your presentation. It's informative. It helps me put together pieces that, I don't know anything about, because I don't work in your department, obviously. And I don't understand overtime and the way that the contract is written and, the privileges that the fire department has with respect to these different pay levels and pay upgrades and things like that that have been earned by your firefighters. I'll say what I have in small budget meetings, just so it's out on the table. During budget years like this, and during all budget years, whether we're lean or real robust, the money has to come from somewhere, and when there's no money to come from anywhere, then I worry about the repercussions to the rest of the city. So if we have a budget amendment that's presented that's 2 million or 3 million or whatever million number it is, that has to be paid for by some department or some people somehow. And so it's just your team is an important team, the police department team is an important team, but the whole city team is important as well. So as counselors, and this, as counselors and the mayor, we have to manage those budget situations. So if we are presented with a situation where it is a budget amendment in the millions, and we don't have any money available, there's no fund balance, then we have to go get it from somewhere else, because those commitments for that overtime pay have already been made. The hours have already been worked. There's no way for us to say, we can't pay you now, because we have to pay. And I don't ever want us to get to a position where we have to say, okay, who's getting cut in the city? Who doesn't have a job in the city? Who doesn't get a raise in the city, whether it be police, fire, or any other non-sworn person? So anything that you all can do, anything that the police department can do, anything that the non-sworns can do is really, really critical in times like this. So, Councilor Bellis, do you have a question?
Yeah, first a comment, then a question. Just to make sure, this is partially a question and then a statement. With the parental leave, when you said the cost of that benefit, you meant the cost related to just overtime?
Correct, yes,
Okay,
sorry.
I just wanted to flag for everyone that I wouldn't
Yeah.
view that in a vacuum, because a
Right.
benefit like parental leave is a big that's a big additive and retention piece, and is like a really critical thing for retaining and recruiting young professionals, so
Yep.
I'm sure also is offset by a great value add. I just didn't want it to be like someone saw that and was like, parental leave costs too much money and we shouldn't have it.
And Councilor
yeah.
Dawson, just to your point, I would like to say, yes, it's a great recruiting tool.
Yeah.
For that young generation,
Yep.
the folks who want to get in here. And though 3 is the average, and the cost that you saw
Yeah.
was for 3, we know that just 3 firefighters off does not require a callback. I want to
Right.
be clear about that.
Yep.
There are all these other leave categories, when
Yep.
added up with the addition of the 3 for parental
Yeah.
leave, that results in the callback. So if it was just parental leave, on its face, 3 is very manageable.
Yes, and I'll flag that it's recommended for most dogs that they get 8 weeks of parental leave, and so the US, which has no standard nationally, is really lagging behind dogs. I'm not kidding. When a dog has puppies, they recommend like 8 weeks of like rest, etc. The US has no national standard and guarantees no parental leave for anyone. So the fire department's
Dog
doing
do that.
I work in maternal child health, and so I look at these stats fairly often, and we have a terrible track record of a country on parental leave front, and so I'm glad the fire department, especially for paternity leave as well, has that. And then this was a question just to make sure I understand. Like, thank you so much for that presentation. I agree with Councilor Lake about just the complexities of overtime, and then definitely don't want to. I had some questions, and I was like, wait, you guys are in contract negotiations. I'll leave that, but I'm not going to pretend to know or get into those weeds. I am curious though, just from my understanding, and I had these 2 things that in my head I thought were specific to the Tulsa Fire Department, but now I'm worried I'm confusing you all with EMSA. Do you all do triple overtime pay?
No, so
Okay,
they're
that's
just
just
hourly.
IMSA.
Yeah.
Okay.
Our 1.5,
Okay,
Time and a half.
and then, okay, time and a half, but we don't do
Yeah.
triple.
No.
Okay, and then my other one within that was, when someone gets that call back,
Mhm.
does that have to be for a set amount of time? Like, hey, if we've called you back, we're gonna guarantee you this many hours
There
of-
is a certain amount of set time, either it could be a night shift overtime,
Okay.
it could be a day shift.
But
know,
you're
so-
going, like, we're not calling you back
You
for
mean
1 hour.
hours, yes,
Yeah, like,
you
we're not
mean
calling you back for
hours.
1 hour, you're gonna
No,
be here for,
Right,
and you're guaranteed, at the point that we've called you
Correct.
back, you're gonna be here and guaranteed pay for
Correct, and then if you're,
X number of time, and that's part of, that's in the negotiation.
right, and just because we call back does not mean we call back every time for 24 hours.
Right.
Yeah.
It could be, what's the minimum, like if you call someone back, 3, okay,
Yeah, it's 4.
4, okay.
4 hours.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's how, I was just kind of curious how that worked, because I know that sometimes some of those things might not be a 4-hour thing, but I also understand at the point that you brought someone back in, you're not gonna be like, just be here for 30
Right, right.
minutes, yeah.
And so, and even if they are, so it's real, there's short staff callback minimums, and then there's emergency callback.
Right.
So like if there's a major alarm or major incident, we call staff in, and then we did some, even March 14th, when we had the significant wildfire weather, I mean, we upstaffed apparatus, we avoided the 175 loss of property of homes and such as occurred in Stillwater. When we lost 8 pieces of property inside the city, but, my goal was to ensure that I had enough folks on duty. Those things do cost, and those are unexpected costs as well that are worked in there, so.
And then,
So our 4-alarm fires as well.
Yeah, major, right,
Right.
exactly, yeah.
Counselor
Okay.
Bellis, I wanna just operationally as well on callback, so he showed a chart with the different
Right.
ranks. In the fire department, if an FDO 1 is off, and FDO 3 can be called back, but it also works the opposite. So if an
Yep.
FDO 3 is off, an FDO 1 can be called back.
Okay.
So it's not rank specific, so there is the movement across the ranks, but I think it's generally a wash at the end of the year.
okay, that's really helpful.
And to your point, but
Yeah.
everyone's point, it is a very complex thing, and this is, you can see how,
Yeah.
I mean, we have run this
I
8
would
ways
wanna
to
make your
Sunday,
algorithm
to
for that,
try to
yeah.
find ways and look at this very granular. This is, and I'll just, it sounds, we have got more information now than we've ever had, so, and for us to target where we need to make improvements and how we can curtail,
That's great.
any kind of, and flag early indications of any problems.
And then with FEMA reimbursements, is just the last question, knowing, once you mentioned that that was a higher category, and we've seen, like, most recently, I'm thinking about, like, in Kentucky and St. Louis, or, no, in Kansas.
Right.
Yeah, where FEMA, like, reimbursements being, or aids being denied.
Correct.
Do we get confirmation of getting FEMA reimbursement when we first do that kind of callback deployment?
Correct, those
Okay.
those will come through the State Office of Emergency Management if we get a federal level request,
Yeah,
through that Emergency Management Assistance Compact, that it will come through formally, and that
Okay.
means that, hey, it has been approved for reimbursement,
Yeah.
and there's a certain period of time. The conversation nationally with all USAR-related sponsoring agencies has been, there's very little confidence that now we will get reimbursement from the federal
Yeah.
level.
that's my
And so
concern.
everyone is evaluating their deployments. So in-state's a little bit easier, it comes from the Oklahoma Department of Emergency Management. Out-of-state
Yeah.
is a little bit iffier.
Yeah, and then I just want to note to my council colleagues with that instability of like, you're right, if we have a weather event or something that would take a FEMA response, but we don't have the FEMA reimbursement, it's not like we can opt out of providing emergency response, but then we're on the hook for those dollars.
Right, if we go, if we have the ability to say no.
Oh, that's
We
what I'm
do,
looking
yeah, we do have the ability to say no, and which is what I've done.
FEMA.
Now, for
FEMA,
outside the state of Oklahoma. So inside state's a different
Okay.
story. I'm talking about FEMA level outside.
Florida.
Right.
Yes, going to Florida.
Okay.
Hurricane Harvey type situation in Houston. Our
You can say
teams
no.
recently spent deployments in Florida, North Carolina, things like that.
Okay,
And we have been getting very rapid repayments. In fact, I have some checks to pick up from TEMA now on reimbursements that have come in. However, these are, again, the city basically has to front that. And in good budget years, that's one thing, but as we're looking at this situation now, it's not.
And the reciprocal of that is if Tulsa were to be hit and need
right.
Right.
federal level support, us making that decision is one of those hard decisions to not send across the state or to assist other agencies simply because of, the budgetary constraints. But there is potentially a reciprocal of that, but those are the hard decisions that we're asked to make right now.
Okay.
Okay, I hate to move on, but we've got to move to police. So, thank you. We'll have other times when we can ask other follow-up
Thank you.
questions about this. So, thank you, Chief Baker.
Thank you.
Commissioner, you're staying with us?
I am.
For this one?
Yes.
All right, Chief, you're up. Police Department discussion regarding the FY '26 budget and capital plan. Thank you for your patience. Did you learn more than you ever wanted to know about fire today?
We prepared to answer the 4 questions, plus any other questions you have. We're not get as granular on overtime, but if you would like us to do that, we certainly can bring that back to you.
Oh, no.
So-
I
Ours
just,
ours
I
doesn't
was
have
just,
a level of complexity.
I was just kidding. I know
Yeah.
there's a rivalry sometimes between the two departments.
Really?
Okay, before we get into the questions, I just kind of wanted to give a general overview of where we're at and also what our priorities are. Our priorities have always been aligned with the mayor's office and making Tulsa the safest city in the United States to attract not only families but also businesses so we can grow our city and grow our economy. Violent crime remains our #1 priority, followed closely by elimination or reduction of drug trafficking, specifically fentanyl, meth, and cocaine in that order, because we have seen record recoveries of fentanyl, and when I say record, we used to high-five each other in our narcotics division if we got a kilo. We've had several incidents where we've recovered 96 pounds of fentanyl. That's 7.5 million overdoses in one search warrant. It's potential overdoses that can get into our schools, get in our society. And so that is obviously our #2. And then finally, the third one is the reduction of domestic violence, because Tulsa County remains one of the highest in domestic violence within our state, and our state's a top 10 state. And 18 of our 50 homicides last year were domestic violence related.
What's that, is it again?
We had 50 homicides in 2024. 18 of them were domestic violence related, and we're currently, through the mayor's office, working with BWJA, a couple of PhDs from DC, are looking at those 18. Is there something a commonality that we can identify, a silver bullet that would help us identify and break that cycle of violence before they result in a homicide? In addition, Chief Brooks and I have been talking about bringing in another study to look at our operation of domestic violence from the moment we get a call, through our encounter, through our arrest, through the adjudication, and the outcome of it. Because we're still looking on how can we do our job better with domestic violence, because we recognize we have to drive that number down. Personnel is our second issue I'd like to just put on the table. It's our #1 thing, and that remains recruitment, like every other department in the United States. Although I'd like to say there may be a small light at the end of the tunnel. I hope it's not a train. We've never had a 30-man academy since the pandemic. We have 31 people who have passed all their certification to be offered a position in our September academy. We are extending that offer. We realize from past that some will say, well, I've already taken a position with OHP, so no. But we are anticipating starting somewhere between 25 and 30 people in our fall academy. We have not done that since the pandemic, so we are trending up in that. We also are focusing more on officer wellness to keep our officers that we currently have in the streets, addressing their mental illness, their fatigue, and making sure we don't burn them out and have them leave the profession at an early stage in their career. The 911 center is fully staffed for the first time, and we have pulled down the job description, so it no longer appears on the city website. I think it has taken us literally 8 to 10 years to get there, but we are fully staffed, and we even have a file cabinet with applications pending that would like to be considered to be hired. The Real-Time Information Center under technology still remains one of the biggest technological leverages our field uses. The 911 technology that's been moved forward, if you all have toured, we completely remodeled our 911. We pulled the floor up, new wiring underneath it, all new consoles. We've made it much more user-friendly for the 911 employees that have to work there 24/7, 365. We're looking strongly into drone technology to save us money and make our officers' job safer. We're not there yet, but we are researching that. And then achievements for the past year. The first time in 50 years, we've solved 100% of our homicides. And I'd like to comment on that. That's January 1, 2024, December 31st, 2024, 100%. Actually, our last unsolved homicide was July of 23. So when we hit July of 24, we will have, if we don't have any
Tulsa
unsolved,
Police.
we'll have 24 straight months.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, we'll have 24 straight months of incredible work by our detective
Part of
division. We knock on wood.
I know. It's called 596 cops.
Okay. Anyway, continuing on. Our challenges remain in trying to drive recruitment up. We're 136 officers short of what we could do if we were staffed at 943. We have 2 management studies that show the police and population inside our boundaries of 410,000. We should have 943 officers. The things that we could do would be obviously what you've seen us drive in the impact area when we focused on the entertainment district downtown. We've also focused on the retail district and tried to reduce retail crime along 71st Street. There are a lot of things that we are constantly managing through moving our officers around by intelligent-led policing strategies that we could do so much better, and a robust bike patrol, all these things, a downtown station, if we had 943 officers. So we will continue to make recruitment one of our top challenges. And then, just so you'll have kind of a reference, we responded to 560,000 calls, a little over that, for our 808 officers last year that were actually in the field. Answered 560,000 calls, made over 20,000 arrests, and roughly 7,000 individuals went into and through our municipal jail. Our current academy, at the state, we have 15 new officers that are in the field and field training, and 18 that are in the academy class that will be the next to graduate. So 30 of our current 825 is in training. So we're actually below 800 officers that can be assigned in the field. And then now, to move on to question number 1, you all asked, and I brought my 3 bureau chiefs with me because each of these questions kind of cross the line of our bureau chiefs. The reason, or why was the RTIC technology coordinator position reclassed from AT-28 to AT-40? Explanations up there, but to put it in real, like, layman terms, we had analysts, and we realized that we have almost 100 cameras. We needed somebody who could go up in a lift, install a camera, wire it in. So we gave up one analyst position. We reclassed it to a person who had those talents that could basically mount and do maintenance on cameras that are deployed throughout the city, that the city of Tulsa and the Tulsa Police Department run the real-time information center. So that's the main reason that person was upgraded. We had to have somebody, we reduced the number of analysts by 1, and we went out and we wrote a job description with HR and hired somebody to basically do the maintenance and installation of our cameras. Question number 2 is the victim services advocate. And basically what happened here was all of those were being funded through different grants. As those grants fell off, we worked with HR to say, they were funded at a certain level by the grants. We reduced some, and we moved one up because we thought the supervisor of the unit who has a master's degree should be paid at a higher level than the basic advocates that are working under her in the Victim Witness Center. Jonathan, did I say that right? Or Eric?
That's correct.
Okay.
The one that initially took the EX-44 had a master's degree, and those duties were reassigned to the supervisor, and the Browns were remaining in line. They were reclassified to the same level.
Okay. Can somebody scroll that down to number 3? There we go. What happened to the 15-person warrant clearing unit, and I'm going to let Chief Brooks explain that.
Chief, you might come up here, just so the 3 people watching can hear you.
4 now.
I'm probably not very far off.
That's pretty loud.
I did 4 now. Counselors, good afternoon. Hey. So the 15-person warrant unit was originally designed under Mayor Bynum when we were looking at a strategy for our jail and looking at a partnership with the Tulsa County Sheriff's Office to hold our municipal inmates. And part of that, an ancillary negotiation was that the police department would take over and manage the state's warrants or the district warrants for Tulsa County. So in anticipation of that, those positions were created. However, there's been no agreement reached for the jail nor the unit warrants, and so those positions sat vacant for a long time. And so through this budget process, those positions were, since there's no anticipation of filling those positions were eliminated. Now, however, as a side note, not directly related to this question, though, we worked with the mayor's office and Laurel to meet the needs of the department and reestablish some different positions with some of those that were eliminated. And we'll get into that later, but that's the whole premise of that question.
Just to clarify, because, if some of my colleagues remember, this was something we approved kind of at the last minute at the end of last year, where the mayor's office came with a request for, I think it was a little over $500,000, maybe it was like 600 something thousand. I don't know if I have the number right. But something like that, I don't know the exact number, but it was for these 15 positions, which I understand. So it sounds like there was like a coordination with the county that was supposed to occur that just didn't move forward.
Right.
And so,
Yes.
and then I just wanted to clarify, so what were the dollars used for then, you all reappropriated them elsewhere?
So
Where?
every dollar for this 15-person unit
Yeah.
was, during our budget process, and they were initiated, all those were eliminated, okay?
Okay,
So, however, some of that dollars that were eliminated, we were allowed to recover for additional positions that you'll see in our budget highlights, what we're calling like our virtual report specialists, where we can start meeting the needs of the community when the officer's not always available, and really expediting our calls for service.
okay,
I'll let the chief explain more of that when we get to that topic, but,
okay.
so, yes, every dollar there was eliminated out of our budget. for this-
From last year, or
No,
for this year, okay.
starting for this year.
But what happened with it last year?
Yeah, what happened with the money that was appropriated last year? If it was $600,000?
Yeah, I don't actually know the amount, I'm just.
Any unspent money just rolls to the general fund's fund balance.
Okay.
Okay, so it just
It
wasn't.
just came back in.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay, that's helpful. But then kind of you're offsetting going, but we have these other needs, so there's,
In
but
this
for a
bu-
different
in
dollar
this
amount.
budget year.
In this budget
In this
year.
this coming budget year, we had additional needs that, where we requested some of that.
Yeah, so if they had 600 appropriated, now they're gonna use
Okay.
500 of it for different things. That's,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, thank you,
This
that's
year.
helpful, yeah.
So was the full 600,000 back in the general fund?
Or the full whatever amount it was.
I think,
I mean, it's in the general fund, as with any dollar that.
Right, I get that, I'm
departments
asking,
From
what was
last
the
year.
amount? Was it the full amount, or was it a portion?
get. Was it all, it was all in the general fund, and I think it was $800,000.
I'm asking, of the 600, I mean, we're using that as a number, but of the
You're saying
600,000,
it's 8
how
though?
much of it rolled back?
Rolled back
Could
to
they
the
have
general
used it
fund.
for something else within
Oh,
the
I
department
see
during
Jared.
that year?
It was 6, okay.
Counselor Lakin, I think
I'm not asking.
Sarah is.
everybody has an answer. Yeah.
Well, I don't think you understood my question.
Yeah.
It,
I'm
the
waiting for the
positions
right
were
answer.
12 jail records clerks at 487 and 3 supervisors at 171. So,
Yeah, so 600,000.
Okay, but that wasn't my question.
Yeah.
Whatever the amount was.
Did
of
we
those
get it
rolled
all
back,
If it wasn't
what came
used.
back of that portion, not all the dollars of that came back to
Oh,
the
it was
city?
approved.
Could they have
Oh.
used it for
Never
something
taken.
else?
It was never taken.
Yeah, it was just said there.
No, I'm asking if
Whenever
it
you-
could-
Whether you
if
wanna
it
say
could be
that it was earmarked,
reallocated to
but
something
then we never
else.
spent it, so
You
it
never
stayed.
spent it.
It was about 20 with the wage.
So it was not spent.
It was
Right.
never spent.
That was my question.
Yeah, that's what he's saying.
Okay, you wanna go on to number 4?
Sure.
Okay.
The impact unit, Chief Wilmerhauser. The impact.
Downtown unit?
Yeah.
Yeah, just,
You have to come out.
Money.
yes,
This is your 5 minutes of fame.
For the 3 people watching.
so I tried my best to answer this, but wasn't totally sure what the 15-person downtown unit was specifically, if,
I can clarify, actually.
Okay.
This is my question where I just remembered the 15-person warrant clearing team, and at one point I had heard during kind of like a downtown convening, like, what I thought sounded like about the same number of a proposal. So to me, I was like, I actually for a moment had this where I was like, oh, did the 15-person this become the 15-person
You're talking
that?
about the micro division?
I just, I had heard that, early on in this mayoral administration that there was interest, right? Yeah, and it putting more concentrated stuff into downtown. And at one point I'd heard that number. So you could ignore the 15 number for this if there's just more about specific.
What's happening downtown?
Yeah, just the downtown.
Okay, so, again, the AM and PM impact units that work predominantly downtown within the IDL have been around. It's actually increased at least one body since 2021, last time I looked at the different org charts. We have been in discussion with Chief Larson and the Mayor's Office and Commissioner Roberts in regards to any additional resources that need to be dedicated to downtown. We've done some initiatives downtown to actually see what works, what doesn't work, and then we've met recently with the mayor and have some recommendations and are going through the process on formalizing any of those recommendations based off of shift change numbers, organizational numbers, So currently, right now, just dedicated to the impact units whose sole responsibility is inside the IDL, it's those numbers. That does not account for the regular patrol officers who are additionally assigned 24/7 within a geographical area as well. One additional piece we have done already is, for instance, downtown falls within side of beat 2 and beat 3 of what is Baker Squad. And instead of having them always potentially respond out to something that might be lower priority, they've been given directive to stay inside the IDL 24/7 unless a higher priority call in the interest of an emergent public safety need calls them outside that IDL. So that alone, from a 24/7 response, is about 8 additional bodies 24/7. But again, that's still within the Gilcrease Division, still within the dedicated patrol officer's response.
I was saying, so downtown is just an extension of the Gilcrease division.
Yes, downtown falls within the boundaries of the Gilcrease Division, yes.
Right.
And then there are some grants that operate also in some of the really high needs, high demand areas that we see on the weekends over the summer when the crowds increase here, when there's particular special events. And several of those are grant funded, which we did have exhausted up to this point.
Yes, and I can go into a whole lot more about downtown if you wanted to, or we could, if that was that question. Okay.
I'm covered.
Cool.
I don't.
So the
Thank you.
downtown office, the downtown officers and supervisors are located where? Are they on the main mall?
So they are assigned to the Gilcrease Division, and
Yep.
from occasion, what we did was we opened during lunchtime on that storefront
Yep.
from 11 to 1. We didn't see a whole lot of in-person response to that, but there were people who were happy that from 11 to 1 it was open.
Okay, but it's not open anymore.
It's open intermittently, yes.
Okay.
We still possess it. We still
Yes,
have it.
correct.
It is an option and is available.
But it is not
Is it on Main
24/7
Street? Where- why is
Yes.
it-
It's at 4th and Main.
Okay,
416, I
yeah,
think.
that's where it is in my brain.
So
Okay.
I was disappointed.
Should have not.
That loud.
Question number 5, community engagement person. What happened to it? It still exists. Back when Commissioner Roberts was in command of GRID, we realized the calls for the first part of it, the bike patrol unit, were heavily on the River Parks area, Turkey Mountain, and mostly around the gathering place because of the large crowds of gathering place. So it was taken out of comms and it was assigned down to RID. The community outreach and the engagement unit up there, they were taken out, and I'm sorry, I'm stumbling on this. The community outreach is still in there. Those are the core ambassador officers. And then the mental health unit is currently assigned in the 911 because there's office space. We ran out of office space downtown for them. Basically, those moves were made to make them more efficient. The core ambassadors still are inside comms along with our social media pages that are constantly data mining and finding out where we can send out and be part of all parts of our community. If there's a community function going on, they identify it, they meet with the organizers, they bring it back to the department and say, we should have a presence there. And we're always there to interact with the community and let them know what we're doing in their area of town. Question number 6, I can tell you
Want
that
me to speak to that? Did you want me to speak to that?
I'll speak to it. I was up, the day I was named police chief, Mayor Bynum said, pay him exactly the same thing you're paying Chief Franklin. And so my salary has not changed since that date. The salary correction was actually done in February of 2024, which was 3 months before I became chief, and it aligned all the department heads. So while it might reflect that I got a $22,000 raise,
Yeah, let me
I didn't. But I'll be glad to take it.
Well, people were pressing me on that. I said, and Jared was very helpful in
Yeah.
helping me understand.
Yeah, not all reclasses result in a change in pay, and so for the police chief, this did not result in a change in pay. So it's a factual that the change happened, and that was included in our highlights, but the dollar amount associated with is not accurate. So we'll make that correction in the final budget book.
Say that one more time.
Dollar amount's not correct, you said?
Just say that
The
one.
23 or 22,000 that's shown there, we did not actually pay the police chief more due to the reclass. Sometimes you reclass a position and there's a pay increase, and sometimes there's not. And in this case, there was not. But it's showing up in the budget book as if there was.
Mhm,
So
right.
it's a typo.
Correct.
That's what I.
But it's
Just say it's a typo.
but it's supposed to happen
She's a translator.
at a certain time.
Yeah, that was what I was
Maybe like in
thinking of as well.
if it goes through July 1st, there will be a raise.
No.
No,
Okay.
there is
No.
no raise for the
No.
police chief.
At all.
There's
I like
no
where you're
new
going with
money.
that, sir.
When he
It's
promoted
no.
into his position,
Right.
I assume he received an increase from what he was making before, but
Sure.
not due to this
Sorry, Chief.
reclass.
So it was a typo saying that he was gonna get a raise, and he's not.
Correct.
And I am transparently still unclear about what happened with
Oh, so
the
there's no
board
raise at all?
dollars, but that's another
So
story.
he's not, there's no change in the pay at all.
For the police chief, correct.
Okay.
His time.
When he promoted,
Sure.
but not as chief.
As the position didn't get a
Yeah,
raise.
when he promoted from deputy chief to chief, there was a pay change.
And
Oh, yes.
Archie, just to be very clear,
Right, yes.
the reclass happened when Chief Franklin was still here, even before Chief Larson took over.
I guess I'm trying to understand what does the reclass mean if it's no change in pay?
Just means it went from the 65 level to the 71, and at the time, multiple department heads were being classed at that level.
Okay,
You just didn't include a pay increase.
cool.
Right, and the 22,000 is a typo. Yeah, so we have 22,000.
That was the root of the question, so that's good to
It
know.
actually goes into that very top line that said compensation and benefit changes overall. That's where that 22 or 23 should have been.
Okay, we killed this one?
Yes.
Okay, we have to keep moving on. Anything else?
That was all that was on the questions that you submitted us to be prepared to
Will
talk
we
about.
have-
We will talk about anything in our budget, capital
Oh,
items.
yeah, we
We
still
have
have,
two more on here.
we still have the mayor's, no, we've already done fire, but we have the mayor's
No,
office.
no, within the police one, there's the motorcycle one and then the overtime.
Are motorcycles included in the proposed FY '26 budget?
Yes, they come under vehicles, and the confusion that lies there is we tried to we'll start at the very beginning. Harley Davidson has notified us that they will no longer make a police bike as of 2026. We drive Harley Davidson motorcycles on our motorcycles. So there's only 2 current police motorcycles out there. The state of Oklahoma has used BMWs for about 10 years. So we went out to bid in January, once we got a price quote to all the BMW dealers, the same one the state of Oklahoma uses. They did not respond to the bid. We called them when they did not respond to the bid and said, why? They said, because when the new administration came into election, what do you want to call it? Office, that the tariffs had affected their rate and they could no longer sell us the bikes at what they had quoted because there's a tariff that wasn't there now on Germany, so they would not bid on it because they did not know what their actual cost would be. We generally replace 3 of our motorcycles a year, talking about a rotation of 12 bikes. So we don't buy all 12 in 1 year, it's 3 every year. So every 4 years, we take a bike that probably has 25 to 30,000 miles out of service. It goes through the FMSC committee, which is the committee that's chaired by Mark Hogan. They look at the bikes that are up for replacement, they see how much maintenance we've done on them, how many miles they have, and then they approve the purchase of a special vehicle. Our intent is to, when this budget is approved, We will buy 6 next year instead of 3, because we were gonna buy 3 out of last year's budget, and we're gonna buy 3 next year. So we will probably be asking for 6, if we have that many bikes that meet the criteria to be replaced. And we'll start that process probably early July by putting it on the FMSC review, have Mark Hogan's committee look at it, look at the mileage, the maintenance, and the cost of the older bikes. And if he approves that many to be bought, we will buy that many next year. But right now, Kawasaki went out of the police business almost 20 years ago. Harley and BMW are the only ones making police bikes. We understand that Indian will be bringing out a police bike, but generally, as a rule of thumb, we don't buy something in their first year of production, especially when it has no track record pertaining to the safety of the officers. So that's kind of a long-winded explanation of why we didn't get BMWs last year.
And then, anybody else on that? Oh, yeah.
I do have a
Okay, we
question.
got it. We have, just real fast, just so everybody knows, the mayor staff has to leave at 2:40.
Okay.
So, and we're at 2:17. We're probably for 2:19. So the quicker we can wrap up the police discussion, the sooner we can get to that agenda item, but please go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to know, I know that the fire department, TFD, gave us a breakdown of their overtime
Oh,
and the ranks of overtime pay.
should we let him talk about that one first and then? Because
About what question?
Oh, just
Overtime
OT.
question.
It says
Overtime.
FY '26 proposed budget, total overtime,
and it's in $1 million increase.
yeah, an increase of about $1 million,
And-
$944,000.
And what's the ranking officers that are, what is the rank of those officers that are
To make overtime.
accumulating the most overtime?
Okay, the rank of the officers that accumulates most overtime will be the officer's rank, our lowest rank. The only 3 ranks in our department that are eligible overtime are officers, sergeant, and lieutenants. When you become a captain, you are exempt. Captain, majors, bureau chiefs, and the chief do not get overtime. The actual $900,000 adjustment is to align us with what our anticipated expenses are. Most of our overtime is driven by, and I have a percent breakdown of the highest categories, if you'd like me to read those to you.
They're in front of me right now, if you
The-
want.
yeah.
31% of it
There we go.
is hire back, which is the equivalent of fire department's callback.
Right.
And that's staffing to minimum staffing levels, which for the police department are discretionary and management rights, set by the chief. And then the second highest breakdown is overtime pay other.
And that's gonna be the unanticipated overtime, like you arrest a drunk driver 30 minutes before your shift's over, and it takes you 2.5 or 3 hours to book them. Everything from that to when we have a dignitary visit and we activate SOT to protect that, the president or vice president. It has a wide range of, when the derecho came through, that came under other, et cetera.
That's over 50% overtime, those 2 categories.
50%.
Over
Okay.
50.
Of those two
Two alone.
categories.
Okay, so it'd
And
be
probably
20%
90%
on
of
the-
that is going to officer rank, the bottom level.
So 20% of that then would be to other service, 20% would be to other services. When, you just said,
Over 50% is those 2 categories
Right.
combined,
the,
so 31 and 27.
right, okay.
And then all other overtime, which is court, which is special events, which is SOT activations, special assignments, is what makes up the other 40-something%.
I would be interested in a more detailed other,
We'll be glad to bring that back to you if
Okay.
you want to do it in a small
okay.
budget meeting.
Yeah, we can add it on here.
Yeah, let's add it
that's
on. I
fine.
had like one follow-up question
you.
related to like past vacant positions relative to, it's too weedsy, so yeah, I can wait.
Okay. You good? Okay, Chief, Commissioner, thank you all
Thank you.
very much. Okay, item 3, discussion with reps from the Mayor's Office and Finance Department regarding the proposed budget and capital plan, including a discussion on proposed counselor amendments. So I know Mike has his appointment that he needs to get to, but we can continue the discussion even after he leaves because Finance Department is here and James is here. And he was the finance department. Okay, do you have a presentation, or are you just here to talk to
I believe
us?
it was a discussion with representatives.
we can read it.
And so, I think we came prepared to listen to the discussion and see if there were proposed council amendments, certainly, which is the last part of this agenda item.
Yep.
And you all have had a lot of discussion about things that are of interest, and we understand that. We understand that this is not a budget we were excited about proposing when we had to look at cuts, and you'll notice, when we looked at the last two groups that you looked at, our public safety divisions, we did not make cuts this year. And so we're trying to figure out a way, the best way we can be fiscally responsible and keep the service to the citizens at the highest level possible. And so that's what we've tried to present so far, and we understand that there's discussion about how we go about that mutual goal, and happy to have that discussion with you today.
Okay, I'll kick it off, and then anybody else can jump in there. So tell us, in the budget, you're taking us back from 8.5% on the emergency reserve fund to 10%.
Yeah.
And that cost is, what, $1.7 million?
I will defer to our finance
I
director.
know, yeah, she's gonna turn to it faster than me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it goes from 27.5 million to 34.4.
Oh, 27.5 to 34.4, so that's a lot of money. Did you ever consider going from 8.5 to 9%, or 8.5 to 9.5%?
So I think the logic behind this is, number one, that's what our goal is, or at least
Sure.
that's where we're trying to be. When the FEMA reimbursements come back, that will be then a very positive influence on our budget. And then to make sure that we're spending because at this point, we're talking about fund balance and where do you put it? And so we're putting fund balance into a one-time use, which is that reserve, rather than using it for $6.5 million of operations. That just digs that hole faster. So that was the consideration, is to meet the goal that's already been set and established, and to not use that additional fund balance for operations and dig that hole faster.
Can I just add on that we used 46% of our reserve for the wind event that happened, the Father's Day storm? 46% for an event that was just a few hours long, and it took quite a bit to clean it up. And so we want to be prepared for the next disaster, and so that's also part of the thought process about putting it away in case we have another event, before we ever get that FEMA reimbursement, if we ever get it.
But what was
Yeah.
the percent at that time?
It would have,
It was 10, okay,
the 10, yes, it was at 10%.
okay.
Yeah, so first of all, what do you mean, if we get the FEMA reimbursement? Is
I
there
mean,
a question?
So I always feel like.
Always a question.
Yeah.
Especially now.
When the funds are obligated at the federal level, you can have more certainty that you're going to get paid. But our largest claim is the debris pickup, and that has not yet been obligated. And FEMA has initiated additional reviews, and so they're in that phase of additional reviews. And the staffing at FEMA is not, I have some discomfort with like what we're hearing on the staffing at some of our federal agencies.
Yeah.
But until it's obligated, I don't have a good feel.
Sure.
Of course, all of us feel better once we actually receive it.
And how much is that?
It's, I think it's in the range of like 12 million is what we're still owed.
Okay. And what is our, what's our operating reserve number? Did you say it's 27?
It was 27.
So it
It's
went down to?
Moving up to 34.4.
Yeah, but
Pre-storm?
money went out,
Yeah.
and money could come back into it. So
Yes.
what's the balance? Is it the?
Right now, it's at 27.5 million.
Okay, but it could go to 39 if we get the money from FEMA.
Well, we would bring it up to the 10% level if we got the money. If we don't increase it in this budget and we got the FEMA money, we would increase it to the 10% level. The rest we would allow.
But an
to-
unallocated fund balance.
Oh, okay.
10% of the budget.
Of the revenues or the revenues?
Revenue sources?
Mhm.
So that's where the 34 comes from, so 10% of 340
I
million.
just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure what that.
Oh, I know, yeah, no, it's a good clarification. Okay, well, obviously, I believe it's prudent to get to the 10%. I also believe it's prudent to give our unsworn employees raises or stipends. And, you know, when we have as many people who work as hard as they do for our city, I really think that this budget lacks in that regard. And so I would really like to see us contemplate moving that number from 10% to 9.5%, or from 10% to some number, so that we can give our unsworn, non-sworn employees a stipend raise of, let's just say, 1% of their salary. We have the cost run for that, that's, Sarah, 1.7, well,
1.7.
if you
I
do
think
the enterprise funds and,
plus the general fund.
plus the general fund. So it wouldn't even be, given that we have a $7 million difference between the 8.5 and the 10, then, you know, it might just be 50 basis point change down that we would have to make in that regard. So I just put that on the table for consideration as we try to figure out ways to take care of our non-sworn employees. And that's just one possible way to do it as well. And there's also the potential where we could say, no, we're really dead set on going to the 10%, but if this FEMA money came in, then the first use of those FEMA dollars would be for this kind of stipend. I'd rather just go into the budget saying that we're going to do it. I have more verification and validation that it's going to happen. And then when, hopefully, that money comes in, then it just refunds that and gets us closer to our 10% goal. Okay, yes,
Yeah,
and then, I'm sorry, did I
No,
miss you
no,
too?
it's,
Oh,
yeah, it's okay next, but I feel like he was about to ping off of what you said, so I'll.
Yeah, I
defer.
appreciate you
Okay.
vocalizing that, because some of the discussions working around here, you know, with the increases in all facets of our economy, I think some of our employees are a little disappointed, so I'm greatly happy that you vocalize that, because like you said, I don't like looking at it as potential.
Yeah.
If we get that FEMA funding, I think we would want to bake that into the front end. And then, great if we get the FEMA funding later.
Good, thank you.
Here, I was,
Okay.
it seemed directly related
We'll go
to, so I'll.
It
Councilor
was,
Har-
so,
Harper.
say, we were waiting to hear back from FEMA on that, what you said, 12 million?
Mm-hmm.
If they say no, what is our recourse? Can we sue them?
Have to, legal on that.
I'm asking, is it possible?
I don't know that we can.
Red alert lawsuit.
I mean, we had the
There's a lot of
disaster.
municipalities figuring that kind of thing out right now.
Statutes and the terms under which we agreed to provide that assistance. I can't answer
I
that.
think those are, I mean, we provided it to our citizens. It's not one of the events where we have gone to someone
Yes.
I
else.
see.
Those are different terms.
Yes.
I don't know that there's any,
Oh, no.
I don't think there's
So
any.
if FEMA says no, then we're just,
We're out.
SOL.
Out of luck.
Or
I
SOL.
don't think we could.
There are internal appeals processes
Within FEMA,
yes.
do they got a head?
Maybe it'll benefit us being
Yeah,
Oklahoma.
they just have to decide whether they agree with themselves on those appeal processes.
Okay, so other than that, we're SOL. Okay.
And then,
Wellness and the government.
yeah, and then, pinging off of, I just had a quick mini list of potential, amendments that I think have been surfaced, but I'll mention up front, I'm glad that pay increases did come up. It was brought to my attention by an array of water sewer employees about how they're losing some of their most senior people to private companies, or also Broken Arrow apparently is splitting their water and sewer departments in half, and it's changing what they're able to compensate in a certain way. I don't know the logistics of that, but we're losing people to competitors. And it's people who are experienced, and that makes a big difference on projects that we care about. So there's just, if there's anything we can do to help with retention of some of these, employees, I think that's really important, if it is just that slight morale boost, or I think cost of living increases around, I don't actually buy this number, but I've seen for the year 1.5%, that seems like a real underestimate to me, but at least being able to try to even a 1%. So I agree about if there's a way to maybe look more incrementally at reserves over a 2-year span. And then just wanted to flag, I had initially been looking to scale multifamily, but it sounds like we kind of have a multi-year assessment plan for that, so I'm like tabling that. But just from conversations today and then a past one, I did want to circle back like with all of us related to that urban design planner element, and really looking at, if not that arts role, that like I think the council could use more definition around, then where else can those dollars come from? I think what's hard is think we're all like aligned on so many different goals between the mayor and council, but at the same time, we're looking at like, you know, across departments, austerity measures, at the same time that a lot of other things are growing and scaling, and it's hard to pair those two things. And so I'm just trying to look at some balance there. And then I do want to flag, and I don't know exact dollar amounts, I feel like we need to get more in depth on this, but the municipal court. Like what we saw and what we heard and what needs to happen, I feel like we have to really take another look at that whole budget section.
Yeah, they're coming back, right?
Yes.
Are we scheduling something with them to, because I asked for them to kind of rank order some things so that we could be more confident in what the returns were and then what needed to go in this year's budget, next year's plan.
They've worked on some additional information, and Dana and I are meeting with them tomorrow to make sure that it answers the questions that you all had.
Okay, 'cause I'm just naming that that's another spot where it's, okay, where are dollars for that going to come from? But from what we heard, some of that like doesn't seem optional to just, you know, kind of some of the cuts that we're looking at, or just their underfunded state already doesn't seem feasible. And I think that's the hardest thing with some of these things, is we're looking at already underfunded departments and we're making more cuts.
Yeah.
So,
Counselor Gilbert?
Thank you, Counselor Lakin, Chair.
It was just out of order on my sheet. I was like, I don't think I already
you
called
forgot
on
your
her.
name after this many years.
The lady in pink?
That's okay, it is. So I also want to look at, as what we heard in our morning meeting, our 10:30, that we're losing a code inspector. And looking at adjusting that, because in reality, that's one of the core basic duties of the city and services that we provide to citizens to help clean up our city. And so we're already behind, and I know that I know it's just one, but that one person is essential of moving us forward rather than moving us back.
Is it possible that Brand could explain or give color to what that position would
We
do?
only have 6
How
more
it would-
Yeah, let's use Mike while
Brent
we
could
have
just nod
Mike
in
before he has to
agreement
leave,
or
and then afterwards, we can ask
We
Brand.
can ask him one-on-one, but
Oh, we can come up,
that's-
Yeah, I'm
but
gonna request.
We just only have 5 more minutes with.
For the next one.
Mike.
So there's nowhere on earth I'd rather be than right here. So
We
you
really
have me as
believe you.
long, you
Yeah.
have as long as you
we
need.
only
That
have
feels really sincere.
Until the next meeting starts,
Until
I will
2:40.
be here.
Okay, hang on, let's, okay, are you,
So that's my,
it's really bad when the two
You know, I feel
CVs sit
cheated
next to
from
each other.
10:30 this morning. I was throwing darts at the guy sitting at the chair, in that same
that
chair.
would be James.
He's
I know,
behind
that's
you
what I'm
now.
saying.
Yeah.
He's behind you now.
He can come back.
I got pulled back.
Counselor Dutton?
So I don't know if this is pertinent or not in regards to all this. I'm wondering, since we have a new administration, how many positions have been added as opposed to the positions that were already in effect when G.T. Bynum left office? And is there a differential in the amount of expenditures on pay scale to the administration? I mean, what is are we balanced as opposed to reorg and people in various departments? Am I making any sense?
Yes.
So we did have a lengthy discussion, I think, the last time we got together on this exact thing, and the mayor was here for that. I don't know that I can elaborate much more than he did at that time.
Yeah, I can't recall.
So let's
Okay.
continue the conversation. We'll consult our previous discussion and absolutely continue the conversation. I think, I would say to the number of positions, and Christie, you can tell me if I'm wrong, there were unfilled positions that were that were budgeted under Mayor Bynum that are filled now. in the mayor's office. Is that correct, Christine?
Yeah, I guess I would ask to clarify, are you talking specifically about the mayor's office staffing or the city overall?
The mayor's office, administration, and the differential, and
Yeah, so overall, I would say
Salaries.
that the mayor's office I believe is by charter, is given a certain number of
Right.
positions, and when they're vacant, they're budgeted at a very small number, and so obviously the salaries when they're billed are gonna exceed
so
that.
it's a wash.
Mm-mm.
Dollar-wise, I won't say it's a wash.
No, it's like an $1 million increase, but per her point, it was like these smaller numbers as holding places relative to having salaries there.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, I mean,
Less people, more money.
Bynum
Yeah.
really only had about 4 when he was leaving office, three or 4.
Which he had started with a lot more,
Mm-hmm.
but it is a lot of, you're right, when you look at the actual increase amount or percent, looks very large.
Well, I
May-
yeah, I
maybe
just
what-
needed clarification on all
So,
of that.
so we did not create positions,
Right.
because we're kind of, to the extent that you're having the conversation of, we eliminated 14 positions, did we create a bunch of new positions? We created 2 positions in this budget that I know of, and which were in the development services to deal with the permitting issues that we've talked about, and we've all talked about some this morning. And so, I don't think we've created any other new positions.
I think in the water, sewer, stormwater, there might have been some in the utilities, but in the general fund.
In the general fund,
Two.
thank you.
Okay. We just shifted departments to be under modified departments, and people placed into, like, with
To pretty-
us, now we have assets.
Yeah, the reorg did not create new positions or new headcount.
But it may be helpful for you to see
Yeah.
what the past administration had before people started leaving to go get new jobs, because, the sun was definitely setting.
Yeah,
Um,
I think,
And
Some
a new sun was coming
senioritis.
up, so you could see what it was when fully staffed and what it is.
Well, I'm just thinking about how some departments were moved under parks and how that affected pay scale and people underneath that
Yeah.
umbrella. I mean, I would be interested in that too, that kind of breakdown.
Okay.
And some of those positions became part of the general budget, right?
The
There were-
general
There were
fund.
positions that rolled over
Yeah.
into
Some final staff.
Right.
kind of civil service.
civil service
Correct.
positions.
Yeah, Bynum may have moved them into a department before he left, so now they're part of the general fund. And there's a vacancy in the mayor's office that was still filled.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, Counselor Archie.
Yeah, so
And then Bingle.
I'll save the majority of my comments for the next meeting, but just want to raise how important I think Brant Pitchford's group is. And so I'm gonna lobby for more, for more support for them. And so as the mayor's considering revisions and whatnot, let's keep them strong. They were doing some mowing. I took out my mower and I started mowing with your group just earlier this week.
Send an invoice.
Well, I did for free, but. I heard about that. Yeah, you did. But, you gotta keep them strong. You gotta keep them strong, so thank you.
Did you help or did you hurt?
I think I expedited.
Were they mowing again after you?
I had my weed eater out.
Oh, that's good.
It wasn't.
That's good too.
I'm in the community, guys.
I knew you guys were coming. I just didn't know when.
And
Yeah.
I won't speak for everybody's district, but that's certainly, most of the complaints that I receive in District 1 are based in code enforcement.
Mhm.
Yep, so I don't know if that's the case for everybody else, but that's certainly.
Yep,
Yep, 100%.
Counselor.
Okay, well, I got disarmed with that.
You gotta
Because
be
I-
faster.
Obviously, Brant is at the top of a lot of our lists, and as I was telling James this morning here, we're adding to a pile that's already pre-existing. And, now that we're in the growing season, that's just gonna expand further as they work through that backlog. And as I stated this morning for Route 66, we're gonna pile more on them, and then as we're working through the mobile vendor issue within our 2 districts predominantly, that's something else we're asking them to do. And I want to make sure that they're staffed well enough so that they can get through these, because we have had some, I think when we went through the Quickie Mart thing, What else? What was the other? Crosby Heights. Going through those different things, you can have things that kind of age unnecessarily. And we failed as a city to do some of this code enforcement. And then, you know, as he was sitting here talking about summary abatements, and that can be problematic. I had a angry constituent leave my town hall last night over this specific issue. Is that not correct? And this was over an out-of-state investor property in my district, and I can't speak for Counselor Gilbert or any of the other counselors, but when you have out-of-state property owners who are asking and texting you and enticing you to buy your property, this becomes more problematic and creates more of a process problem for Brant in that division. So we need to be mindful when we're making these cuts, and additionally to planning, right? So I'm gonna kind of segue into that. Some of those cuts are important, especially when we are going to get into this potential of creating another capital improvement package. We don't need to come to the table flat-footed. We need to have good plans and good ideas that the citizens can support and get behind when we're asking them to pay for things, especially we're in this discussion, Councilor Bush and I going to DC and advocating for the infrastructure dollars that we need to continue developing. And then we're, on top of it, asking our citizens to increase utility rates. So there's a lot baked into this, and I have to be able to explain some of this stuff, and optically, some of it just looks bad. Especially, and I chewed out my own constituents last night about spending their money over in Catoosa and Broken Arrow. You want all these services, but you keep spending your money over in these other communities.
Yeah, don't go to Broken Arrow.
I don't want to help those communities because they're not going to send me a rebate check to make up our shortfalls in our sales tax. So
There's a good idea.
yeah, that's not going to happen. So
$1,000.
I want to be very careful about what we're cutting, be mindful about what we're cutting. And from my understanding, when it comes to our permitting process, this is really more about process than personnel. And streamlining that process and helping people get through that so that developments can come up out of the ground faster. So I know that's a lot all in one sitting, but I just want us to be very careful about where we're making our cuts and how impactful they're gonna be to certain portions of the city versus others. All right, off my stuff.
I just want to put on the table, since we're hopefully just creating a list, somebody's creating a list, so that we can bring it back up for discussion.
Right there.
Oh, there she is, yeah.
She's on the list.
I knew she was around
Can I
somewhere.
have one more?
Sure,
complaint?
yeah.
Okay, so, Mike, I also want some clarity around this Mayor's Office of Public Art and Community Partnerships. We already have a Arts Commission, so I really don't understand that. Can you put some clarity around that?
So I can put, that is not an area that I've worked on the most in the mayor's department. I'll tell you what I know, and if I get something really wrong, I will send an email and apology to all of you. I'll tell you, I just want to give that caveat, because that's not the area that I've worked on the most. I think the goal is to make a high-profile dedication from the city of Tulsa that we are supportive of the arts community in Tulsa. So it's not just coordinating the existing Arts Commission. It's developing relationships and integrating art and the arts community throughout our, number one, I think through our capital programs, which it's already a part of, and then two, through the community at that high level. And so that's kind of the short version. I think that Tulsa is absolutely a good arts community. It's one of the things I love about Tulsa. Visual arts, performing arts. Sarah, let me know if I missed some, but.
Like types of art.
Yeah, the types of art, but all of those, because we've had some discussion about that. But I think that's the goal, that it has not been, it may not have had that focus and that level And I think the mayor wants to make sure that we recognize the city as an arts community. in that
So are
way.
they gonna help coordinate some of this stuff? Like, I will tell you, like the Global District, when they did the, underpass of the 21st Street and 169 Bridge, and they had to go through ODOT to get permissions to do that artwork. Is this now gonna fall under their realm to help coordinate some of that stuff?
The job
Since-
description read to me more as like artist than like, I wasn't sure if it was planner, project manager, or if it's someone with more of an arts background, like, that's where I also.
Yeah, I'm just challenged about what this
Yeah.
position is actually going to do.
So
And
I
have
will promise
clarity on that.
follow up with more detail than I currently have at my disposal.
No, it's
Okay.
listed.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just gonna put a few on the table. We've already talked about Muni Court. We talked about River Parks a time or two ago, and the additional duties that they have on their plate related to the management of the new Zinc Lake Dam, everything else.
Turkey Mountain.
So I know they were, Turkey Mountain, yeah, thanks. They were having discussions with Anna and her team. I just don't know where they
Yeah.
turned out,
And
so.
Yeah, those emails are continuing today.
Okay, that's good. Mowing cycles, I don't have the piece of paper for some reason in my packet, so it must still be in my desk. But I think we went from 15 to 7, or some big number to a much smaller number.
32 to 16.
What is it?
32 to
32 to
16.
16.
Okay.
And that is
See,
one of
it
the
was
number one
close.
things I hear from people.
It's still half,
about.
it's just different numbers.
Yeah.
If we're really focused in on inspecting other people's property to make sure they're maintaining their property, we better be taking care of our own.
Right.
So, and it wasn't a major, mowing cycles are one-time expenses, because you're, I know it's ongoing, because it is grass, but once you mow it, you're done.
Replace it with rock gardens.
That one time. So I would like to reexamine that to see how we can, if we're gonna be moving maybe from 10% to 9.5%, or 10% to 9.25%, or whatever, I would like to potentially use that. And then I have a graffiti abatement meeting scheduled with some folks in about a week. And it's people from the state, people from the city, people from the county, to try to figure out how we get a grasp on how much graffiti is on all of our structures, especially on the IDL and in the IDL. And so I don't see it being a major expense, but we have got to put paint on top of that paint every single day in order to stop it.
Yep.
So I just put that out there since we're creating the list. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to piggyback on what you said about the graffiti. If we keep throwing paint on top of paint, I promise you it's gonna get worse. And I only know that just from my experience, that you're giving them a clean slate to start over, so we might consider other aspects of mitigation in that regard.
Totally.
Because when you throw up new paint, they see it as a clean slate to
We'll do
canvas.
waterproof paint.
That's right. It's a clean canvas, ready to
Like,
go.
everybody go by and
I know,
And they
I know,
appreciate
and
that.
I'm all for increasing our ordinances, increasing the penalties if they are caught, but it is just out of control. And
Right.
it is,
it is.
what was a beautiful city is becoming an ugly city because of what they do every single night. Mango, and especially, whoever Mango is.
I know, I have a few names I see all the time, Bebop or what, there's a few.
Yeah, Mango is,
Use the cameras for it.
I'm not happy with Mango.
So there's,
Okay, what else? Anything else? We have a 2:30 that we're 20 minutes late for, and you're 10 minutes late,
That's all right.
so,
I got it.
okay.
May I
Yeah.
If there's anything else, I'd love to hear it. If not, I'd love to just add something, if I may.
Sure, oh, yeah.
So, I've heard and hopefully taken down as many of those things as possible. I would hope you understand that I agree with all those comments. There's, none of these cuts were like, oh, we're so excited to do this, right?
Totally.
And so, we've all talked about how much we love Brant. I've known Brant's mom for 25 years. I don't want to have her call me and say, why are you cutting this budget? But so I just want, I know we have this context. We've got 4,000 employees plus, and we've cut 14 long vacant positions. And so those were not done with a cudgel. They were tried to be done with a scalpel, or whatever the right terminology is. We tried to find positions that have been vacant for a long time. We tried to find, as such, to the extent they've been vacant for a long time, we're not cutting this service. It's a service that we've been budgeting for but not providing. And we're trying to do it now to avoid a place in the future where we don't have that choice. And so I know you all understand that. I just wanted to say, we agree that when we hear you say, how can we look at this because that's a priority, how can we look at this as a priority, that we agree completely. And so to the degree that we have to try and make some choices, that's what our conversations will be around.
Yeah, no, I assume so, and that's why I started really with,
Right.
why did you go from 8.5 to 10? Hoping that you would say, well, it's just the goal. If we could move the goal down to 9.5, if we could be iterative in getting back to the 10, especially in a budget year like this, it gives us a little bit of room to not make as drastic of cuts as what was in the mayor's proposal. So maybe we get some of those things back that we all want without putting our city at risk. I don't want to put our city at risk. I don't want to have the 2 storms or not get the FEMA reimbursements. We really have to calculate what that risk is and be very prudent about that. But if we feel like we can safely do that and conservatively do that, then I would hope that we can put some of these things back into the budget so that we can provide for the wish list of councilor and mayor's items.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Anything else? All right, we're adjourned. See ya in, let's just say 3?
Yeah.
We do 3?